third lesson outline, which is composition. In this lecture, you will learn how to use effective composition, including using a grid, the rules of thoughts, and other compositional principles and practices. So now, have you come to think have you come to see seeing pictures and you wonder how the designer was able to come up with something like this? You wonder, why did the person or the designer decide to put this car here, decide to make this line travels like this and all of that? As you can see, this this is a wavy line. As you can see, this is a wavy line. So, or you wonder how or why the designer decided to put the content like lively goes like a greyhound, this right up. Why the person decided to put it around this side? What is happening? What brought up about this idea and all of that? Have you ever thought of, okay, okay, maybe you see, let me even use our common Nigerian designs here, and you see something like this nature. You wonder why the designer decided to put this here, 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 here. So stuff like that should be coming to your mind if you've actually not been designing, or maybe you've tried designing and you've been designing. Your designs have not been giving you what you want. You've not been falling in love with your works. So composition is all of this. So talking about composition, you have to understand composition is the arrangement for beauty. Composition is the arrangement for aesthetics. And in this class, which we will definitely not go back to, I would like you to understand that uh, we will be covering composition for today. So you will know where to position that text, where to position that picture according to a professional instinct. Understand now? So now let's go straight to the point. Talking about arrangements for aesthetics, which is composition or beauty, arrangements for beauty. Number one thing you need to know is proximity. So proximity, when it comes to proximity, means you have to pack or put related items or objects. You have to group them together. What does this mean? We're talking about proximity here. This in design. Proximity means you have to put related objects or content. You have to put them together so that your design will be looking organized. That's number one thing when it comes to arranging for aesthetics, when it comes to composition. So now you have to understand, as you can see, we have shapes on a particular section of the design. We have text on a particular section and text on another particular section up and down. But now, as you can see, the sizes of this text differs. Like we have larger text on the top and smaller text on the bottom. Mind you, each design comes with an idea. Each design comes with a pre-designed mind. Like you've actually made a conclusion in your heart before you start designing. You should never go to your desk or to your laptop without having what or having plans of what you want to design. It will be disastrous at the end of it. It will be disastrous. Or maybe at the end of the day, the work that you're meant to spend an hour or less than an hour, you find yourself correcting several things on it. You spend 3, 4, 5 hours on. So if you already take a pencil or a paper, or if not a pencil or a paper, you just have a sketch on your laptop or a sketch pen on your laptop. You sketch whatever you want, then it will be easy for you to place your object without no stress, without any stress. So now you have to know that pictures should be augmented in a particular session, which does not have a particular rule. No, there's no rule that says pictures should always be on the right hand. There's no rule that if you have any question, you can drop on the chat box. There's no rule that related objects should be grouped together. Related objects can be, let me use a live design for an example now. See, these are related objects in a particular session. Then we have related content also here. Then we have related content also here. This is a theme of a design. It's closely packed together in the center of the design. And this is the time and location closely packed in the center of the design. So it's not, I don't have, it's not that I have the Tuesday hanging up around there and the time hanging up around there. So now we know that the time and location are related content of a design, are related object of a design. Why not bring them together so that people don't, or your viewer don't need to travel very long before they can access it? A perfect example. So this is the brand identity, this is the brand name, and this is what they're actually selling out of this flyer. This is the focal point of this flyer, of this design. Sunday, your loved. Then we have their social media or their contacts here. So this is a perfect example. These are related. They are in one section. This is in one section, which is the focal point, and this is the brand identity. It's not that we now have the logo. We have the logo around here. We have the phone number around here. Then we now have we have this. This is also is what we call, is also what we call negative negative space, which I said is the area around an object, while the positive space is the actual object itself. So now the area around an object is the white space. So now white space is very important, and white space does not really matter that you're trying to use it to form something. White space is any space that is in between objects in a design. Perfect example of white space, let me come back to this, is this. Uh-huh. The white space does not really mean the space is white. It's just an area itself. It can be white, it can be blue, it can be pink, it can be any color. Does not the fact that they call it white does not make it white. From this proximity, from bottom of this proximity to the top of this triangle, this is a white space. This is a white space. In between the white space, in between these rectangles are white spaces, which are negative spaces. Let me use the word negative so that you don't mix it up, because this design itself is just black and white. So now any space, even spaces between letters, which I will tell you, I'll give you the definitions of all of these terminologies when it comes to typographies, when we get to typography class. Between these letters are white spaces. White space are negative spaces. Let me use that word, like I said, negative space. Then the positive space is the actual object. This proximity is the actual object, which is a positive space. The rectangles are actual objects. They test, these small tests are actual objects. They are the positive space, and the negative space is the spaces around the positive space, colors around this white itself. The object here is the write up and the basketball and all of those writing, the content. Then the negative space here is this purple color. This purple are the negative space. So it does not really mean that your negative space should be white. The negative space can be any color. Thirdly, we are still on an arrangement of composition, arrangement for aesthetics of beauty. We have alignment. Alignment helps you to imagine content arranged in grids consistently, consistently. And in this particular area, like I said now, consistently means consistency is key when it comes to alignment. Consistency is key. Contrast is a relationship between two objects or two contents. Let me use that word. It's a relationship between two objects. Relationship between the two objects can be depicted easily with colors compared to shapes and all of that. But I will try to give an example of contrasting shapes. Contrast. What's when we talk about contrast, what can we use? How will I put it? What can we use contrast for? Basically, contrast is for emphasis. It's used to emphasize a particular section of a design or the whole design itself. So uh, uh, now imagine this mountain. Imagine this mountain or this shape itself as just one single color. The contrasting nature of this mountain makes it seen as a mountain. Now imagine it's just a single color. You will definitely not see it as a mountain. There's no how you will see it as a mountain. So that's a perfect example of contrast. A contrasting color or contrasting shape. And move to the next one, which is hierarchy. Hierarchy. So now the idea of contrast is not just with colors. The idea of contrast is not just with colors. Contrast can be reflected in styles of text. Okay, now this is a perfect example of contrast here. As you can see, there's a difference in the pro. There's a difference. As you can see, this proximity now. See the proximity. There is a difference in the in contrast. Like the pro is actually signifying something thick and bold. Then the Zimity is slim and is of a different style of font. Can you see this font is definitely different? As you can see the pro, the font for the pro is different from the font for the Zimity. So proximity. So that is called, you can achieve contrast with color, you can achieve contrast with styles of text, you can achieve contrast with size, you can achieve contrast with size also. I mean, you can decide to, because pros, let's try to make the pro very large. Then we can talk about contrast in this nature, in this nature also. This is also contrast. So contrast can come in color, styles, and sizes. It does not really matter that it's just text. You can also do that with shapes, forms, and all of that. So let's go to the next. Hierarchy is a visual technique that can help to navigate or help the viewer to navigate your work. So now you can see this design. The first thing your eyes should see is the contrasting nature of the background with the main actual object. So that means what you should first see should be around this nature, around the Happy New Week, because it's the dominant object in the whole composition. Happy New Week. Before you now start thinking, or before you now think of looking at something else in the design. So now, if you are to check this Happy New Week design now, you start from the Happy New Week, and before you know it, your eyes take you to the guy drawing in the background. Then you now come back to forget about the failures of the past week. The week is an opportunity to do better, look ahead, be great. Before you now start thinking of the social media or the website or the phone numbers, or before you even now come back and see this Roosevelt multimedia. Let's check another design that does not have different travel method or different journey when it comes to information, because this starts from the new week and down to the guy. Then before you now start thinking of this and this, you now go back to the Roosevelt. So let's check this. Okay, this is a perfect example of a design here. What I foresee, what I believe the focus on this design is, number one, this guy here. When it starts from this guy, then it has to go the way to this locked. So the focus. So what hierarchy does is it helps you create a sense of travel for each of the design, and every design must have it. There should always be a focus in that design. There should always be what people will see first before seeing the other things around it. So now you don't just see everything in the design deep. What you see is you start a journey and you end the journey. Your design must tell a story, must have a starting and must have an ending. Now, this is a perfect example also. This, what you first see here is this car, this Mini Cooper, and before you know it, your eyes take you through the wavy journey of this. Then you now come back to see the content here. That's just it basically. So, and lastly, we talk about repetition. Is a consistent look, feel every project must have. Like, is a consistent look, feel. Like, coming back to this particular one, this is a perfect example of repetition. Consistent. These are consistent shape. They have consistent negative space in between and the likes. See repetition in this manner, and the repetition travels. We have that. See repetition again. See repetition again. See repetition again. Repetition again. Repetition again. Let's look for repetition in the repetition in this scene is that most of the content, or majority of the content, are diagonal. That's a perfect example of repetition also. Perfect example of repetition also. And we can use shapes, we can use font. If you use a particular, just a particular single type of font in the design, it's also repetition. But this now is repetition in all the lines of the text to find your style, find yourself. There's repetition in it. I will now take you through a journey in composition. Now, I just talked about arrangement, how you arrange in design for aesthetics. So we have proximity, we have negative space, we have alignment, we have contrast, hierarchy, and repetition. So now orientations too matters because the orientation of a design will actually determine the type of you actually determine how we are going to position your content or your position your object in the design. So I'll create a new page. Let me do that on InDesign instead and not Photoshop. I'm picking an A4, go to print and pick A4. Let me set this. Let me set the unit to points. Let's see. Then if you can see, there's a tab around this corner that says portrait and landscape. Portrait and so that is actually what orientation means. So if I pick, let's let me tick preview so that we'll see what we're doing right now. It will reflect around this. Can you see it has reflected now? This is what the orientation we're on a portrait orientation now. So if I click on landscape, it will change. If I click on portrait, it will change. That is on and on. And as we proceed, notice that the width of this document now is 595.276 as in point. You can change the unit to whichever you want. Most times I work with points or centimeter. So if you're on centimeter now, for instance, it will just convert it to the actual unit. Now, if you are, for instance, if you're on 20 centimeter now, as you can see, this is an A4 size sheet. The A4 size sheet is saying the width is 21 centimeter and the height is saying 29.7. That means from here to here, 29.7, and the width from this side, from here to here, is 21 centimeter. So now, if you now change it, if you change it to landscape, that means the width and the height will swap position. That means the width is now 29.7 and the height is 21 centimeter. Right? Then you click OK, and that is that about that. That is what orientation means because orientation affects the particular composition. Now, the type of orientation this particular type of design has is different. Let me come to real life examples. Type of orientation this design has is different from what this is going to have. As you can see, this is in a portrait manner, and this is just a one is a square size shape, one by one shape. Is a square size shape. When I say one by one, I mean one ratio one is to one shape. So and you cannot compare that with this. So the kind of orientation also matter. This does not have a specific orientation because if you go landscape, you still have the same shape. If you go portrait, you still have the same shape, and it affects the composition of the design. Is a portrait. Is a portrait, and let me now bring out. Let me try to make it a square. Let's see if I to make it a square. So if you're making it a square, is either one of these content is. Let me make it a square with the window. So I'm making it a square with the window, and let me try to fit it in this window. You see what we have now. Is either some part of the design cut off, like someone like this. You cannot see orientation also affect the composition of the design. Orientation affects the composition of the design. So now we go to using a grid. Using a grid, like now I'm trying to give you points or tips that will help you arrange that proximity matter. Just understand that grouped or related items should be together. Negative space, alignment is important, contrast is important, hierarchy, repetition. So now, how do you now achieve this beauty? How do you achieve this arrangement? I'm trying to tell you that use orientation to achieve. You think about the orientation. The orientation affects this the way you work with your proximity, affects your white space, affects your alignment, affects your contrast, affects hierarchy, affects repetition. Now we talk about after orientation, we also have you can also a method or one of the things that also affect it is that will affect it for positive changes using a grid. Now, using a grid now will now take us to a broader view of what grid means in design. So it are guidelines in achieving a proper alignment in design, and it helps greatly in orientation. It helps very well in orientation, no matter what, very well in orientation. So I'll make a quick I'll make a quick I'll make a quick example on Photoshop now. In Photoshop, I'll make a quick example on Photoshop now. So let's use this picture as a perfect example. So using grids, there are different types of grid. We have rules of thoughts for composition, and um, several types of grid. You can see, I don't know if your software has a ruler by this side or by this side. If any of your software does not have, if your software does not have, just go to view, whichever one it is, Photoshop or InDesign, go to view, then go to rulers and tick it. Now, if you actually installed just now, it should be like this. Then if you now click it, it should be like this. So we now have the ruler. And you can change the unit for this ruler by right clicking, bringing your mouse close to the side, right clicking and changing each of the units to whatever you want to work with. Right there is in centimeter. I can change it to pixel, I can change it to inches and the like. So points, centimeter. So that is that about that. So now talking about composition and the use of grids. So there is a particular method. Why, like I asked a question before we started, I said, why at times you think about why a designer or why the design has an object being placed in a particular section of the design. Now, for instance, this picture now, why did this design now that made this piece place this image here, place this car here. Now, you want to know why this particular designer placed this car here. So I would like you to follow or help me click. You have to click on crop view, on crop tool on Photoshop. This crop tool, you can click on more options here. In case you don't have it around this side, you can click on more options. You see crop tool. So if you click on crop tool, then by the top corner of this crop tool here, you see different rules of composition. We have rules of thoughts, we have grids, we have diagonal, we have triangle, we have golden ratio, we have golden spiral. So now I will try to click on rules of thoughts. So I just click on rules of thoughts, then I will now click on the image. Now this is what I have. So the concept behind rules of thoughts composition is that you place you place your object of focus, you place your content of focus, the main object of focus, you place your focus on the third meeting point of the horizontals and vertical lines.